Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases. Hello, everyone. Glad you joined us tonight. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Or if you watch the video in the future, I appreciate your viewership. And tonight we're going to be looking, of course, some of the information that's come out with new filings for the appeal process for Richard Allen and addressing a false or another confession that has come forward and is known, becoming known to the public as part of some of this paperwork. And I'm going to give you the perspective of how law enforcement receives these jailhouse individuals that's in there, snitches, rats, whatever you want to call them, that come forth with whatever their agenda is, and that they've been housed with a person of interest or a suspect or someone's been charged in a crime, and they're sharing that common cell area. And of course, everyone has seen many movies made about confessions in jails and people within the system, working the system, getting leniency by saying, hey, I have certain details about the crime that was given to me by the offender which is charged. And enforcement will come to terms with what is given, because just because someone tells you something, and especially an inmate, doesn't mean it's concrete. No more concrete than what Richard Allen said in his confession, regardless if you think it's a truthful or a false confession. This inmate here who came forth with the information to law enforcement at a very interesting time, but while a time that, of course, he was housed with a person of interest that the FBI had conducted search warrants on, and of course, it would be in the news, and there's no low profile person when you're looking at a double homicide, especially involving children. And so you have these inmates, and a lot of times these inmates don't step forward with civic duty in mind. They're stepping forward to work the system. And law enforcement has to look at that information provided to them, look at the details, and see while there may be some details in there that they find interesting. There also may be some details in there that are not supported by what was known at the or found at the crime scene. And that's the importance of law enforcement keeping details about the crime scene, how it occurred, the points of contact, the time frame. A lot of critical things they won't know that the public won't know at large, but law enforcement has those, so they can filter out those false confessions. And that's what we're looking at tonight. That is the Ron Logan confession the true one, or is Richard Allen's confession the true one? And of course, we know we had the other one with the Odinites of that confession with Elvis, and so and I'm not even going to touch that, because this one right here is the one that was addressed in the latest filings. And it's very interesting, of course, and I find it interesting because I've always questioned Ron Logan and the making of his or asking for an alibi. And there's several different reasons. Of course, it's been ruled, or people have spoken about and given their speculative reasoning of why Logan would ask for an alibi. we don't know. And of course, Ron Logan isn't here to defend himself and to clarify anything. But we have to look at that there is some reason that law enforcement didn't pursue it. And that's what we're going to look at. And there also has to be a reason that this information, while it's new to us and everybody's looking at it, law enforcement had it for years. The defense in discovery had it from the moment of discovery until now. And they chose to go with the Odinites versus the confession of Ron Logan. And why is that? Are they going to tie it in at some point with Odinites? I don't know. But there was a reason, because if there wasn't something that absolutely cut the link between Ron Logan committing this crime, he would have been charged way back with the FBI. There had to be something, especially, while we had filings and we saw search warrants and we had details about the search on the Logan property, and he, of course, being a person of interest, those details that there was someone that says that he had confessed to the crime is something relatively new. That's something that we didn't know of way back then. And of course we had, it would have, it piqued my interest also, and it rightly so. But we're going to look at that, and we're going to look at some of the details of of some of the notes I took regarding some of the verbiage used by this inmate that says, Logan confessed to me, and I'm going to provide the information, and it's very detailed. And we're going to look at those details, because while certain confessions and even that secondhand information that you would get from an inmate that says a suspect had confessed to him, there still has to be supporting evidence, and not only of the facts of the case, but if certain things weren't said or weren't talked about, or is just a matter of communicating, and that it's just a casual walk versus we abducted them at the end of the bridge, they ran, they crossed the creek, and that's type of supporting evidence that we're going to have to look at, and we will. But anyway, before we get to there, let's go over to the chat, see what's going on. Hello, BG. We got Paper Chaser as a new member. Thank you for your support. There's your blue light. We appreciate it. Help us as we go on the road this year. And Sensei's here. Timmy Legacy's here. Good to see you. Blackwater, hello. From Stormy, Ireland. Stormy, Ireland. South Georgia is getting, we had our little bit of a snowstorm down in South Georgia. Historic, actually. Hello, Jill Moser. Good to see you. And Cyber Warrior, hello. And Leanne, good to see you from California. Hello, Copper Horse, good to see you as always. Just trying to get caught up here. Olivia too. Leanne says it's 0 degrees. It's not quite that cold here, thank goodness, although we got down to 11 yesterday, which is unusual for Georgia. Hello, Mustang 65. Good to see you. Josh the Posh. And Josh, yes, and actually whenever we have the webinar that you're going to host for your crew, of course, this topic will probably be brought up, and I'd be glad to talk to your group about that. Let's see here. See who else is in here. Canada is still imperial measurements, Celsius. Yeah, we're Fahrenheit down here. Hello, Stacy. Texas Ranger. Still cold in Texas. Still burning that firewood. Oh. No truer words. have ever been spoken, and what Texas Ranger said here: criminals will do just about anything to get a leg up. Yes, we saw that with Keegan Klein, of how he manipulated the system and trying to work deals for him involving this case. And then, of course, we see this coming out of, to me, totally out of nowhere, and found it extremely interesting. Josh the Posh, handwritten notes are weird to me. Oh, me. Hello, Miranda Lee. Good to see you also. Let's see. Nightbot's here and active. Good to see Nightbot. Red Queen. Just if you have any questions, and as if you're new to it, just be respectful of mods, families, and each other. And Josh Posh has this. That's my question. Why didn't the previous defense use this? And that's the thing that we're going to get down to. The crux of the matter is that if this was key, and there has to be a lot of evidence of, whereas as we go through some of these notes I made of the of what's going on, that yeah, we there has to be something that is not supportive. Because most certainly after the defense has had this for quite a while, that if they had it, it would have been a far easier, and I still can't believe, it would have been a far easier story to believe, and probably a far easier story to convince a jury of than the Odinites. I have no idea that of why they went that route, that and bring it in at this time. Why wouldn't they bring it in? And that's the reason I believe that the state had some strong evidence showing that Ron Logan could not have committed these crimes, and that would be the only thing, that there had to be something about it. And Texas Ranger has a very good point here. Guaranteed it wasn't Ron Logan seen walking muddy and bloody going down the road. Yes, that's in the opposite direction. Good point. All right. Let's see what time. I'm going to get up to 8:10, then I'm going to... Gail Hurd, good to see you. Hope everything's going well for you, Gail. Recovery. I thought Ron Logan had an alibi for a majority of the time of the homicides, and he's too tall to be BG. Yes, that was part of the argument, and that may be, but when we look at the FBI affidavit and the search warrant, that isn't how the FBI at that critical time stepped forward and looked at Ron Logan. They basically said he was the offender, which was more included in that search warrant than what would have been required for a judge to sign. You don't have to make them absolute that he is the one that will be charged. I found that interesting, but it's yeah, it's a lot of stuff. And Quentin here, and this is an interesting thought on him. He says, I believe Ron Logan prison confession. The neck detail, and I think his nosebleed was on Abby's clothes. Maybe he burnt the clothes and made her dress up in Libby's. Is there, because we do have some clothing, I think, that is missing. And that is an interesting thought, and I really can't argue it, but there has to be a reason why the defense didn't go down that path. I don't know what it is. It will be interesting to see what those details are. But with that being said, I'm going to go into some of this stuff before we get too far into it, and talk about some of the some of my notes that I have. Let me get down here to it. Anyway, when this inmate, of course, gets this information, he makes contact with, through the jail staff or whatever, that he has some critical information regarding a case. And I've had this happen to me, whereas an inmate says, hey, we got some information. or we're doing an interrogation and we're not even talking about a certain subject matter. We may be trying to interview a person on a totally different crime, and all of a sudden they say, "Hey, why did I give you such and such?" And so, a lot of different ways can inmates come forward with information just out of the abyss and surprise you. And of course, like I said, with this interview and these notes that were made and that would have been in discovery and the presentation of some of the facts. But let me get here. Let's get started in here. Let me get, they talked about that Logan had been walking with the girls and that he knew one of their dads. Now this changes later in a different part of it, of where this same interviews and notes, if it's correct, and I don't know, I don't know how correct that all this information is, and I'm sure there's far better documentations out there, but I guarantee you that the defense and the state has absolute clarity on what was said and how it was said, and the investigative reports supporting or denying certain facts. But one of the things I noted in these notes, and I don't know if it could be just due to interpretation or otherwise, but one point, Logan said that he knew one of their dads. Another point, he said that he knew that one of the girls' mother worked in a bar. And that as they were walking, they were talking about going to the farm, see the farm animals, everything you would think of that, oh, here's an elderly man that owned property near a walking trail, and he wanted to entertain these two young girls for whatever purpose, opportunity, staging, grooming, don't care. That there's a lot of different ways if he had a ulterior motive to get them along the path, which you would say that, yes, this is going to be a crime of opportunity and that he's going to be taking them. And before he can get them to a designated area, which I've always said that if you have an offender that is planning to abduct or use a ruse to take someone from one location to another, they have to have another location. Because committing crimes on public trails out in an area that is visible for extended distances as the trail was, and even the tree line is very sparse, and you can see when there's no leaves or foliage on the trees, you can see for a great amount of distance. And so this walk that he would be taking would have to go in a certain direction, because he's not going to casually walk the girls from that first contact point of where Libby took those pictures of BG and say, okay, we're going to go down the hill, guys, down the hill, and let's casually walk down the hill and then cross the creek. If he was going to be taking them to see his animals, that's not the route he would have taken. And they would know from the supporting evidence of the audio file on that phone and on that video, which was it, how was it, what did it mean, what was the timeline. And so that would be supporting evidence of that that the crime occurred in a certain manner. And this inmate had no supporting information about how that first contact occurred, and of girls or guys down the hill, and how it was said and how it was presented. No mention of a firearm, no mention that the girls instantly said that, yeah, we'll go see your horses and everything, and of course you've got a gun. That's not what is in this part of the notes. And so we have to, we start seeing there's issues from the get-go of how the ruse would have started, when was the gun presented, how would they have reached that location. And if law enforcement has evidence that the creek was crossed, then of course it blows Ron Logan's was taking a casual walk and it got out of control, and the fight started. And of course, we'll get into that of when the fight started, and he pulled out a box cutter. And the mentioning of the box cutter is probably one of the biggest things that everyone's arguing about, because they said he knew details about the crime that came out in the trial. Well, we have to look at, when was that seed of the box cutter first planted? And is everything after that? Because as far as I know, while there was some testimony that it could have been a box cutter, was, of course, later. And was law enforcement looking and had the rumor mill when they were out looking for knives, cutters, box cutters, and stuff, that is the seed for a box cutter planted in May of 2017 with this inmate? Is that the first time that law enforcement first thought about it, and then they looked at it and couldn't determine? Because sometimes we are told certain things, and certain people grasp that, and they won't let it go, and we just don't know. So we have to consider that while neck injuries and homicides are very common, all the edged weapon assaults I've ever worked, of course, consist of either some type of throat injury or some type of stabbing to the chest, abdominal areas, and then you have defensive wounds. And of course, that still confuses me about the defensive wounds. I always will, even with that scenario. All right. Hello, Michelle C., Red Queen. And Red Queen said that Logan did have a solid alibi. And while he may have had a solid alibi, the FBI in those early days, they obtained that search warrant. And they did it for a reason, and I understand it. How did Ron Logan have a cellmate in actual solitary confinement? I don't know that, and I don't know how he was originally, even in solitary confinement, those cells aren't always isolated, and we don't know time spent and within talking distance, or Ron Logan. We just don't know the circumstances. I don't know. Now, law enforcement would know, for the fact that this is a good point. When could that inmate have met with Ron Logan? And in what capacity, and how long would he have spent with Ron Logan? And they would have went into those details. When did Ron Logan give you this confession? How did he do it? Where were you at? What time period? How did you have access to him privately? Who else was in the room or in the common area or the cell block? And they would check with those other inmates in the area for the fact that if Logan is isolated in any shape, form, or fashion, and it doesn't pair up with what the inmate is saying, then of course that can absolutely, that you can't have a confession given to an inmate if he never has access in the manner that he describes that he obtained that confession. And so if he got it through some psychic event or some dream, then he was never even in the same cell block, that is something that would absolutely tell you that, nope, this guy, this inmate is working the system. And they would look at the inmate and see if he had come forward with other manipulations or snitch information or jailhouse rat, ever how you want to characterize him, classify him as whatever he is, that because there's a lot of different ways that, and the inmates don't like people like that, of course. Let's see here. Steve, did you get my email? I wonder if I went to a spam folder. I answered you back. I don't know if you sent me another email, but no, I know it's for the end of February, if that's what you're talking about, Josh. But I don't know if you got another one or not, but I got the one where you dated it, and I sent back to remind me. Junior Johnson says, hello. He's dangerous working at night with ice or walking at night. Absolutely. Be careful out there. There's ice everywhere. We got it in South Georgia. North Georgia don't have any. Miranda Lee says, I'm in the hospital, have been out of the loop with all this news. Okay. Hope you get feeling better soon. See you through. Good to see you. Quentin says, maybe they saved it for the appeal and a different judge. Um, you know, I don't see that as being a best use of critical information. And alternate suspect, third party. Because like I said, if it was something that they could prove, they would have easily brought it up. But there's a reason that the defense didn't use it after discovery. Josh says, if law enforcement does have the strong evidence Ron Logan did not do this, will LE comment, communicate, or release details on that at some point? No, the case is closed. They'll let the all the information be, I expect. I mean, you never know what type of strategy or what type of information a law enforcement officer may get asked in the future, and there's no gag order now. So if some of the officers are questioned about it, they'll of course be at liberty to say whatever they wish, unless they're want to keep any information that may alter or harm any type of appeal process, and choose not to speak. But no, I don't expect that they're going to argue this in the public. They're going to argue this in the courts, and they'll let the court and they'll let the judge say yes or no, and that this is critical evidence and Richard Allen did not have a fair trial and not properly represented, and the information wasn't provided to the jurors that it would have changed their outcome. I don't know how the appeals work. I'm not an attorney, nor will, I didn't even sleep in, what is it, which one of the motels is it? I slept in whenever I go and sleep, I slept in a Holiday Inn last night. That'd be about the best I could get. Gail said that there was no injury needed, thank God, no surgery. I have to do stuff for pain. Thanks for caring. Absolutely, Lambert. Hope you get feeling better soon. The penguin walk. Oh, goodness. Did anyone see any injuries on Ron Logan during the interviews after the homicides on TV? I didn't. And, you know, and if he had a busted nose the previous day, I've had a lot of busted nose. I've had more than my share of busted noses. And uh, both the receiver and the giver. And when that does occur, there's not just a drop or two of blood. You get a busted nose, there's nothing about a drop or two. It's pretty evident. And of course, the argument would be that, well, we have missing clothing articles, or do we? And what are those articles, and what role did that play? And of course, that would be some supporting evidence that law enforcement would be able to look at. And how much of the blood did they test? Where was it at when they tested it? If Ron Logan was injured at the crime scene, he still has to go home. And that's a long way to go with a bloody nose and clean up. And although even if his blood was in his house, there's nothing to be said, because if you process my residence, there's no telling how many blood trails you're going to find on my property, in my garage, in my workrooms, in the lab up there where I work, and do some of our recreation, because I'm pretty well, if it's going to happen and there's any possibility of creating injury at bleed, that's me. And so while his wouldn't be, but you would expect that with Locard's principal exchange, that he would have left his blood at the scene, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. His DNA would be at the scene, and they would have hopefully been able to test. He wouldn't have, been able to wash all of the scene down, the branches, the limbs, the placement. If he has a bloody nose and he's placing those limbs, we would expect that at some point he would have touched his face, and there would be some type of transfer and possible DNA, even from handling the victims, dragging them, touching them. Because if he moved the victims, and there are certain theories about that, yes, one of the victims was dragged or moved, placed, and if you have any type of blood on your hands, there's going to be transfers, and it's pretty visible. I mean, it's hard to hide a bloody handprint. Been there, seen it. Quentin says, I think this defense saved the Ron Logan confession for the appeal because they were never going to prevail with Judge Gull. And I disagree. I appreciate your opinion, but for the fact that there's no guarantee, this wasn't evidence that if you had this, and I think it would be an adequate argument for the state that you knew it. You can't just hide and save stuff. You present it and make the argument for a hearing in court. And so I don't think, and this is just my personal opinion. Like I said, I'm not an attorney, but I think that you can't just say, well, we had the evidence all along. And because I don't think the appeal process looks at the evidence piece by piece. They only look at what was brought up to the jury and what occurred in the courtroom, what evidence was presented or attempted to be presented, and was it taken away from them unfairly? Were they not allowed to bring it? And if you say, well, Judge Gull said that there could be no third party and it was part of their strategy to bring it, then you got a valid point, Quentin, and that may be something that, or how they're trying to address it. Sharon Tobe's mustache is a tragedy. Hey, leave them law enforcement and the mustaches alone. Shelley said, did anyone see a fire burning that night at Ron Logan's? I never heard anyone say that. Did anyone hear a girl shouting around that time when Derek? I didn't, was there, or Tara? Okay. The Yeah, because there would only been a certain amount of time that if he took it to a fire pit and burned it, and we know he went to the dump on the video, but the fire pit. Where is the fire pit? What was the opportunity? We had searchers out there. If you have a fire pit burning in the middle of the night and people are riding around looking for the girls, they'll see the fire, they'll see the flames. It's not that he had a burn pit in his kitchen or a burn pit in his living room. It would have to be somewhere external. And of course, you have all the film crews and the helicopters, law enforcement, within hours of them being discovered. And now we don't have the opportunity for a burn pit to do what burn pits do. And Miranda may probably has probably absolutely knocked a home run on this. I think the defense realized that Ron Logan had a solid alibi, or there was some strong state evidence that would have ended that argument. Hello, Shelley. Yeah, yeah. The Ron Logan angle was thoroughly investigated by LE, and so was the Odinist angle. Absolutely. I believe so. I mean, it would have been, and people are going to argue both of them. I look at it as just there's throwing everything they can at the wall. Whatever sticks is what sticks. And when will it ever end? I don't think it will ever end. Even when whichever way that this appeal process goes, I don't think it's ever going to end or close out. And is this some new phenomenon that we're experiencing with social media? I believe so. I think that every case that we see from this point on, Richard Allen, Karen Reed, doesn't matter what case you look at, that the social media impact of it, and it's going to be probably even greater with Kohlberger. And then, of course, with the Luigi up in New York, what's going to happen there? Absolutely, it's going to be unreal what and what is the answer and how will the courts handle all the information as we move forward. I have no idea. And yes, Shelley, this is something that, like I said, if law enforcement has information that they crossed the creek and it's not a manner of Ron Logan inviting the girls to come look at his horses or his animals, because like I said, no one is, going to take you to their farm by crossing a cold creek in February and say, oh, this is just part of the adventure. It doesn't make sense. And when people give you confessions that don't make sense, then they don't make sense. Shane says that if Ron doesn't have an alibi, I'll eat my iPad. Toe said that he was covered. That's the only public POI cleared ever. Oh, man. Yeah, and I agree with you, Gail, that the story that this inmate gives. Now, is it possible that this inmate um, studied the case, watched the news, um, knew everything that was in the um, publicly around? Could he even have spoken to Ron Logan? Ron Logan says, "Yeah, I have a farm." Or was this inmate able? Because I can tell you something about criminals. Criminals are great profilers. Um, they start at a young age when they start their whole lives. Some of these people, and they learn from their experience. You can watch these people, and uh, when I was working burglary, I learned so much about these burglars and interviewing them and asking them, how did you profile and what are you looking for when you burglarize a house? But they could ride through a neighborhood and tell you the age of the children that lived in that home by looking at what type of toys were in the yard, how high was the basketball goal, um, how high was the garage door up so they know how big of a guard dog lived there. Um, um, walk around back, are there boots? Is there a work shed? Are there work tools? They could tell so much from the outside of a residence of the individuals that lived within that residence. And they're great profilers. And so uh, this individual that came up with this confession, he could watch the news. He may even have spoken to Ron Logan at some point and realized that he was a farmer, or he may have spoken to other people that knew Ron Logan and gathered that information and created this um, confession from thin air. Who knows? I have no idea. Or he may have actually spoken to Ron Logan. I have no idea. But we can't always say that the only way he could get all these details about a farmer outside the town of Delphi owning a horse, or you know, uh, as a news crew drives by and they see this farm and there's Ron Logan, or they talk about Ron and and the fences and stuff. It doesn't take a brain surgeon or or any type of highly intelligent person to determine that if there's a fence running around a farm, we have cows, goats, horses, we have some type of livestock that has to be kept within the fences. And if you have a barn, I don't know what images were shown at the time of this information that by the time this inmate came forward, but they're great profilers. Criminals are great profilers. And psychopaths, and I don't know if this criminal here is a psychopath or not, but they are extremely, if you talk to them and see how they target individuals, that take it to the point of that they are searching for victims that are going to become victims of homicides, that the studies have been done, and almost all of them, as they go through the process and are analyzed and interviewed, they'll pick out the exact same, that if you show them a video of 50 possible victims, the majority of them are going to all pick out the exact same victim. It's amazing how accurate some of these profilers, the criminal profilers, are, not the law enforcement profilers, but the criminals, because they have to, because if you're not a great profiler and you go into the wrong residence, or you misclassify a victim, and I saw that occur where some individuals just didn't make it out. They made the wrong move. They didn't evaluate who they were, who they chose as a victim, and the gene pool is self-cleaning of the ones that are bad profilers. They don't last long. They go to prison, they get caught, but some of them are pretty good. Paulo says, Mr. Steve, I have heard the confession. Yeah, yeah. Now it's a smoking gun at the, yeah. Anna says, it was reported that investigators were checking sales records for a certain bladed weapon. Surely they weren't checking out box cutters. And I agree. If all of the weapons to go out there, and I know it's been brought up and we don't know what type of weapon, but box cutters by far, and I carry a box cutter, guys. Do I have knives? Yes. But I carry a box cutter in my pocket. Got one right now. And I like them just because I can put a sharp blade in on one real quick, and it just works for me. All right. Quentin says, Ron Logan was also pinged by the crime scene late on the 13th, which fits with his confession. And this is something that through my testing, I went there, and I can say that, yes, phones ping all over that place. Now, when I went there was several years after. It was actually just when I was there the first time, it was while the search of Ron Logan, of Richard Allen's house was ongoing, just by coincidence. I happened to be up there. Mrs. Steve and I drove up there, and we did some testing. And pings was one of those tests that we conducted. I think it was on that trip. I've been up there several times, but I think it was on that trip. Because I think that's on when Mrs. Steve went with me on up there. But and the pings are very general. That sometimes when my phone pinged, it was correct. Other times I moved 10 feet and it said I was 500 yards away. Absolutely, you can go back and look at that video. I have it set out, timeline and everything in there, and of those tests and those as Mrs. Steve pinged my phone, which is a different technology, but it was still, I don't know what the exact technology they used, and of course we'll never know for the fact that some of that information wasn't brought into the case for whatever reasons. But it was very strange how my phone's pinged from almost to the road, and it would ping me down in the creek. That occurred to me also. That I'm 200 yards, 300 yards from the crime scene, and it pings me in the middle of the creek. And so I don't know if that's what was going on, or if law enforcement did the same type of testing and it was determined that the accuracy was not enough for a court. And Daisy, I agree with you. I absolutely believe that um, we just need to sit back, calm down, and not get worked up over it. Because now, if this guy had come through and said that Ron Logan told him that he had a weapon, a firearm, 40 cal, um, and drawed it on the girls, forced them across the creek there, and then committed a homicide or whatever occurred, dropped his gun, lost bullets, whatever. But that's not the story we get from this. His story is different, that he received certain injuries and certain things occurred, and law enforcement doesn't have anything to support it. And I probably think that's probably why the defense didn't bring it up in the main part of the trial. Mustang 65. Um, Mr. Steve, after this gets rejected, what do you think they will try next? We'll see what the appeals court, and like I said, um, I don't, I don't know how the appeal process, I don't know how far it goes. I don't know what, if they're denied the appeal, what is the next step? I know that we often see that um, uh, they can appeal it to a higher court, and a higher court, and how far will they take it? Will they take it all the way to the state Supreme Court? And will they take it even further? There's that possibility. So whichever judge is looking at it now, and I think they'll take it to the next level until they run it to its end. Because I know that I had another case with a family I'm working with in Indiana, and their case was taken all the way to the Indiana Supreme Court. And once it made it there, on their argument of for their family, um, and once it got denied there, then of course, until some new evidence comes forth, there's nothing to be done. Yeah, Ron Logan was arrested for probation violation. He was probably in general public. Yeah, it's whatever the classification is, it. But they're also, even with that though, there always can be that if you have someone of a high profile stature, certain times things can be occur as far as isolation. And I'm with Anna that when was the seed planted for box cutter? Um, and I just don't know. It could have been months or not years. Uh, we know that from these notes, box cutter was first mentioned um, within weeks of the crime. What, 6 or 8 weeks? And so that's the first time it's mentioned. And but what importance is it? Because it's not that uh, no one had ever heard of it, and so it can get planted in the mind of law enforcement. And we know what happens occasionally with law enforcement. Things can get out there and can be mentioned, and was it? And we can even see that sometimes when law enforcement's working with individuals, um, that they um, and confessions, that there can be an exchange of information. And like I said, some criminals are great um, um, profilers. They're great interviewers because they'll go and knock on your door and be looking for the little puppy, and you're being interviewed as being a future victim. I mean, there's con artists and everything out there that constantly, the only reason they have interactions with you is that their agenda is to victimize you. And so this individual, while he may be providing this so-called Logan um, confession, but he also may be picking up clues of which way law enforcement wants and what information um, that he turns around on them. It's amazing how some of these guys think. Um, is there a pattern of prison confessions claiming a box cutter or two was used in the crime? I thought investigators were checking out knives. I'm with you. It never occurred to me about all the edged weapons that was discussed uh, until it was brought out near trial about box cutter. Didn't cross my radar. Mr. Steve, if someone has a rock solid alibi and gave a false confession, could the person be charged with perjury? Um, a lot of statements and information given to law enforcement, and even with the FBI, because if you lie to the FBI, it's a totally different world. Uh, but there's certain forms that yes, that if you're making a certain type of declaration, that yes, you can be charged with making a false statement. But I don't know in Indiana. I have no idea. Daisy says, Mr. Steve, please send Mrs. Steve her love. Absolutely. She's down in Florida right now, working out the details of how this snowstorm, she's been snowed in, and I'll have a heck to pay when I get back down there, I'm sure. Shane said, I think it's against the law to withhold relevant info at trial. Steve might know better than me. I don't, I'm sure there's within the whatever lawyer creed there is out there that whatever information and bringing that information to the court to make sure that your client is properly defended, that yes, if you violate those rules of court, I'm sure that there's some type of ramifications that can come through the court system. I don't know what it is. I'm not an attorney, but I know that if I was being represented for some type of crime that I didn't commit or I did commit, and my defense I had certain information and they withheld it intentionally for whatever reason or just because they were inept, then yeah, I think that there might be some issues within the court of how they could address those. Shane says, Steve, in your experience, is it possible while interrogating Ron, a member of law enforcement mentioned the box cutter or asked him, did he have one? Or would they keep that hush? Yeah, they could have asked that. And like I said, criminals are great profilers. They'll pick up on little clues. They may see a report that you're reading, they're reading upside down, and they see a report, or they may look at uh, searches were being done for knives, cutting instruments, edged weapons, box cutters. And they may just see it maybe in a note of a law enforcement officer, and they pick up on those clues. You have to be extremely careful. The only problem with Ron Logan's confession is that he would have seen the crime scene, so he would know all the details. He would know if he did, and I've always thought that maybe he discovered the crime scene and did find the girls early, and that's how come he asked for And that's always been my main argument about why did Ron Logan ask for a alibi. And and it always has been something that, I've questioned. Um, and while he may have seen certain details from the crime scene, um, his interpretation of it, that even the CSI guys and the CSI expert that came in and reevaluated the crime scene, he was confused by certain things on the crime scene that we were enlightened to, as far as that he couldn't answer certain things, and certain things concerned him that he couldn't answer about the crime scene, about the lack of defensive wounds. And so, um, if you take someone that may have just wandered upon the crime scene and sitting there and finding two victims, their thought process in panic mode isn't that there's a really accurate interpretation of what you see. People get tunnel vision. They do in law enforcement. Yes, and yes, this here is about being undressed. That's a big thing to leave out. Absolutely. Yeah, the location where he was been, yeah, it makes no sense. I went there in total darkness to see how easy it was to navigate that location. I'd been there in the daytime before, and in total darkness, and on a moonless night, although I think there was a little bit of moonlight that night, not much, but I think there was. And of course, if you know the property, um, it'd be one thing, but in daylight, there's no reason for him to be walking in the location he was at. Yeah, this has always been something that I'm pretty sure that Richard Allen knew a lot of the senior citizens in that town. And if I ain't mistaken, both of them had a love for beverages, Richard Allen and Ron Logan. Uh, and nothing wrong with that. A lot of people have loves for certain beverages. And so paths may have crossed before. Are the defense saying Ron Logan was BG or involved after the fact? That's what they're. I mean, that's the only reason that they would be bringing up this type of argument is that yes, you have the wrong guy. Um, I mean, they can't argue that yes, while Richard Allen um, committed the crime, he was helped by Ron Logan. So they have to absolutely say that um, the person responsible is Ron Logan, and that's what they're trying to throw at the appellate court. He said they came back and tried to move Libby late that night. Um, I missed that part in the notes I took. I'll have to go back and see if I can find that. Mojo Rising, good to see you. Shelley has been a member for 28 months. Hello, thank you for your support. Means a lot to us. Paper Chaser. And yes, I remember that list that you mentioned. I forgot about that. There was a list of who you can't bring up. But the argument could have been that if they had the hearing and there was critical information that was presented and critical evidence that it doesn't matter what the judge, that there will have been, there's a process that if it was true that Ron Logan was to be considered an alternate suspect, that there is a process to get him in there. But there was something that would not allow that to occur. And it's more than just Judge Gull. There had to be some type of supporting evidence by law enforcement that stopped that process. All right. I froze up there for a minute, guys. But Justice for Timmy D's, thank you there, Mustang 65. Appreciate that. Oh man, starting to pop in and out. I don't know what's happening with our signal. Oh man, get through here pretty quick, guys. But if I get cut off, guys, I appreciate y'all being here. Hopefully, I can get through this without it cutting me out anymore. And this is a good point that they did check Ron's guns. They mentioned that. They went back. Hello, Alexa. Good to see you. Hey guys. Hopefully I got back. Yeah, YouTube has zapped me. Yep. So I'm gonna get back. I'm sure I lost a bunch of information, so um, I hate that that has happened. I'm gonna go up just a little bit, and we'll have to do another. For whatever reason, my internet is acting up tonight. I have no idea. But anyway, guys, I appreciate y'all being here. Um, Black Widow has been a member for 16 months. Thank you. Appreciate it. And let me see if I got any more questions. Jane says, so the Odinist theory is gone? Thank goodness. Yes. Thank God. Yeah, this thing. And Alexa has a good point here. I'm not a statement analyst, but I'm able to pick up certain words. And his letter, the older and younger one, bothers me. Why not the taller, shorter, or bigger one? Interesting. And you have to take Alexa's word for it. She's well educated, well trained. Yeah, I lost everything before, so I only have limited information to go back on, guys. For that, I apologize. And Todd has a very good point here. It makes little sense that Ron Logan would take him across the creek to his own property and risk drawing suspicion to himself. Yeah, it makes no sense for that. And when it doesn't make sense, it's not something. But I apologize that this thing jumped out on me. And but anyway, guys, I appreciate y'all being here. Apologize for the mishap here at the end. But let me go back down here. Yeah. Donate to Mr. Steve to pay his Wi-Fi bill. Oh, me. Oh, God. Y'all are too much. All right, guys. Well, y'all stay safe out there. I'm going to have to end it because, like I said, I lost so much information above that. And, but anyway, it's very interesting. I think it's all just BS that they're throwing stuff at the wall. But we'll see what the appellate courts say. And, but y'all stay safe out there in the meantime, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.